Well, all of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again, because once again, Battlefield has been delayed, which is a bit sad to see. Obviously, if it is in the name of the game being good, that is a good thing. That said, it has certainly rattled a little bit of confidence, with EA's share price taking a little bit of a tumble. Probably the sort of tumble that will be a bit temporary, but we'll get into it. So, following a series of often quite dramatic rumors, DICE have officially confirmed that Battlefield 2042 will be delayed by a bit over 5 weeks. This is because of unforeseen pandemic-related challenges, where this game is supposed to be coming out just over a month away, October 22nd. Now it is November 19th, and they thanked their fans for their inspiring enthusiasm, and noted that there'll be more details on open beta later this month. But when we actually dive into things, there's a little bit more talking and thinking to do. Now, of course, this is all when people have been expecting to hear about the beta test for this game. And, well, right. Supposedly, according to Tom Henderson, we're dealing with October 6th for early access, October 8th for the open beta, but media and influencers have in fact not been given a new date thus far, and have been told to wait for new information, and their community manager has said that the new dates for the beta will be announced next week. Now, as Tom points out, is this sort of thing cause for concern? And he's got a little bit of worry about the changing of the narrative of this game, which is obviously not ideal because Battlefield 5 came out too early. It didn't have enough content at launch. Firestorm really wasn't what the core Battlefield player base, myself included, really wanted from it, and it seemed like it was a little bit of a disaster. Which is sad, because it did actually do some cool things with its core mechanics in terms of the gunplay, and some cool things in terms of like its setting and its maps. Then, of course, there was the entire marketing bungle around this game. Well, this game, Battlefield 2042, has not had that marketing bungle. This is what a lot of Battlefield fans really seem to be interested in. I mean, it's far more channeling that, like, Battlefield 3, craziness vibe, big sandbox, all of that. I've been quite excited for this game personally. Now, delaying beta being a cause for concern is an interesting thing from Tom. There's a few different reasons to think about that, right? Because number one, if they're just delaying everything by a few weeks, then maybe it's all just, moving the entire thing forward a bit. That's one thought. The other worry is, what if they're worried about a bit of a Mass Effect Andromeda situation? I mean, I even think, for a Battlefield game, I think back to Battlefield 4, a game that launched with severe issues that really did hurt it in its early days. Now, thankfully, Battlefield 4 grew into a really wonderful game that's very much loved and still played today. But, you do have to worry. Why would the beta be delayed? Is that tied to the release? Does that mean that, in fact, if the beta was to come out now, the initial coverage would be, the beta is out, and we are worried, because maybe the performance isn't there, maybe there's bugs, maybe there's things that are literally just, actual true blocker bugs that aren't letting them actually get it out there. We don't know, but it's fair to say that, yeah, it is kind of cause for concern that this has happened again. Especially because I think many people would have assumed that given what happened with Battlefield 5, where it really seems like support for that was cut early. I mean, you compare the total sum of content in Battlefield 5 versus Battlefield 1. Of course, I mean, Battlefield 1, the contemporary game, not the first Battlefield. You'll see that 5 really is not up to snuff. So you would have thought that with it seemingly having a bit of a content sacrifice, that this game would have had a little bit more focus and maybe wouldn't have been open to delays such as this. Which, I mean, I can't blame people for being a bit rattled. I'm still cautiously optimistic because it seems broad strokes like it really is going in the direction that I'd like to see Battlefield go. But you can't blame people for being worried. Now, to go into the initial reports, following this story was really quite a fun one. So, Jeff Grubb did some tweeting, saying, "Welcome to delay season, more delays coming this week." I'll add that I'm actually referring to a singular delay. Now, there have been quite a few rumors, some rumors even indicating a significant delay, which was worrying when those rumors were floating around. This was going around the Discords, all just interesting stuff in that sort of leaking community, those people who just have the sources, know more information about the goings-on of these games. DualShockers Tom Henderson hit us with the 1-2 punch of delay and that basically talks about the delay are like unfolding now. So this was stuff that was like going on in real time only on September 15th, which is not that long ago. And it was all up in the air. I think generally the consensus was that it wasn't a massive delay, but there were some rumors that were like kind of indicating months. And all of this has rattled investor confidence somewhat. It's hard to know how much really, because here's the deal. You can do a lot when it comes to covering a stock chart, right? You know, bad news happens, there's a bit of a sell-off, then that sell-off goes to a stage where people are like, well, that's an okay price to buy back in again, and then the stock goes back up again. So it's funny that a few tweets managed to lose EA, 2 million in the overall stock value. But again, stock values for companies fluctuate so much every single day. I mean, if you were covering, say, a company like Tesla or some of those more like, volatile stocks out there, it's like, oh, it's gained billions, it's lost billions, it's going everywhere. That's just kind of what it's like with stocks. But I think this is something where a lot of people didn't want to see this from Battlefield, because this was supposed to be, and the predominant narrative was return to form, right? Sort of this being what the fans want, this maybe having a bit more time in the oven, taking the time to do it right, and now a delay happens. That said, it must have been a real sucker for EA when they changed their plans to really give this game more time, and they don't get to make good on that because they get all of the, the challenges that are associated with, working from home and all of that transition with the pandemic. So certainly sad. EA absolutely will recover from this, right? That said, there is a tricky situation here. This game is coming out November 19th. Warzone integration happens November 23rd. So that's going to be quite hard for Hazard Zone, which is the big new mode of this Battlefield game. Now, we don't exactly know what Hazard Zone is. I actually saw some rumors saying that it's a bit Tarkov-inspired, where you can kind of go in, get your currency, get your stuff, then get to an extraction point and get out, which certainly would be interesting. A lot more interesting than Firestorm, I'll say that much. But if it is going to appeal to a similar sort of player, then, well, Battlefield are not going to have a 1-month jump on the latest Warzone. It's going to be more of a direct competition. And fighting Call of Duty, even though Battlefield is a pretty different game, fighting Call of Duty is still a big fight in the shooter market, right? So that's basically the situation we're dealt with. The next Battlefield is being delayed. I'm a bit sad. I'm hoping this is all for the greater good of the health of the game, and that this is a game that will flourish and be the Battlefield experience that we really all want it to be, because I actually, I don't wish them poorly. I really do wish them well. I love Battlefield. I want it to be great, but it's sad there's another delay. So what do you think?
I find it's very, very interesting after hearing what they were talking about in earnings calls way earlier in the year, because I remember them talking about Battlefield, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly sure they're talking about it being, ahead of schedule. They were really on the ball with it. It was kind of a vaguely throwaway comment, but it was promising, and I do remember, I don't know if we covered it or if we were just talking about it, but the idea that, they've really put the effort into trying to fight it this year. The narrative earlier in the year was with, I can't remember which leaker it was, talking about, was it even Tom Henderson? Talking about how Vanguard looked to be in a bad spot. And then shortly after those rumours came out, then EA were like, yeah, Battlefield's really ahead of schedule, really happy for this year. And you're like, oh, okay, is this the year that big rivalry actually kicks back up again? Because I don't think it's really been relevant for the past while. It's always just been Call of Duty's Call of Duty. Battlefield sort of slips in there sometimes, has a lot of problems. So
certainly with, of course, 5 decreasing its relevance a little bit.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting that this narrative's kind of flipped. So I was trying to think, what possible reasons could there be? Because obviously they say something about the pandemic stuff, but obviously that wouldn't crop up. Realistically, that wouldn't crop up between much earlier this year and, the summertime. Or around September time. That stuff would have been, you'd have hoped they'd have managed most of that. Unless it is something like really new or something like that. I guess
it could depend with see, it's tricky because there's Delta, which I guess has sort of changed the game. Maybe we'll have changed some company policies. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure. And it's also tricky because you can't just look at what's going on in Sweden. I mean, Sweden generally is a lot more, I think, community trust based in its COVID response. So there's that. You wonder, well, how much is that going to impact DICE? Will that change how DICE run things? But then you got to remember, well, DICE LA is in LA, and the States has had a rough enough time lately, so perhaps they have had to change up some plans. And if you lose a few weeks of productivity across a few months of time, that's going to catch up with you and bite you in the ass.
Of course. Yeah, there's a couple other, there's at least one other thing that I think may potentially be the culprit, and it's likely performance issues. Because back in August, now this could be anything from a random bug that cropped up that they could easily solve, or indicative of deeper problems. Kind of similar to performance stuff in Cyberpunk, potentially, maybe. I can't say either way. But in August, they cancelled the technical test on the PS5 because of critical bugs. They literally weren't happy.
Yeah.
They were not happy to say PS5 players can just test this a little bit. They're like, no.
It's a little bit of an early warning for our current situation.
Yeah, we're not shipping this. We're not shipping this technical test, not even a beta, not an alpha. We're not shipping this technical test. So I think there's certainly, could be performance based, could be something like that. It's a kind of thing where I think they've talked about it too well for it to be a sort of like an Andromeda situation where it's like, oh shit, this game isn't ready, but we've only just realized. I think they seem to have been a little bit more on the ball earlier enough, and I haven't seen, things like this don't, generally speaking, I imagine these things don't crop up suddenly if they're quality wise, but technical wise, I feel like that could be the stuff that's hidden underneath the surface, where we're like, especially if you think about how a game is actually architected and how they design stuff, because obviously, the way professionals speak about it is you make the game as much as possible, and not just polish at the last pass, but performance is done at the last pass. Optimizations done in the last couple of weeks. So my money is on this being a significant performance issue that's cropped up in the late stage, and they're like, we can't ship this on consoles.
I suppose they have.
That's it.
Also they have, they're going to remember Battlefield 4. Battlefield 4 is a game I really like. I had a lot of fun in Battlefield 4, but that game was rough at launch. That was rough at launch, and I had a pretty good computer at the time. They will not want that to happen again. Even take, hello, Connell, who's editing this video right now. For the longest time, he just could not play Battlefield 4 whatsoever.
Yeah, I remember that now.
I think he was running a 3570K, which at the time of Battlefield 4, I believe it wasn't the most new chip ever, but it was a real workhorse that people have been able to use for years and years and years. And whatever it was, he was just screwed. Perhaps it is something like that, where they It's hard to say. Look, this is all shots in the dark. I think it would be, based on how they position this game thus far, if it was really truly something about the quality of the game, then it's an issue of marketing not being in lockstep with development, which we have seen happen in games like Halo Infinite.
Of course.
So it could be that. However, after Battlefield 5, I honestly would expect better. I wouldn't expect that. And given that they were still planning, that technical test until suddenly it wasn't time to do the technical test on the PS5.
Yeah.
Perhaps that does lend a little bit of credence to whatever would have been standard got, with the polishing and optimization, just got reamed somehow. We can't know how. Or without finding out, without somebody actually speaking up from the team, we don't know. Certainly, what we really do know is that COVID, but again, if it didn't massively seem like that in the past, they have said here, with the ongoing conditions not allowing... Given the scale and the scope of the game, we had hoped our teams would be back in studios together as we move towards launch, with the ongoing conditions not allowing for that to happen safely, and with all the hard work the teams are doing from home, they're taking more time. Now, if you're just to take that 100% for its word, then it is suggesting that perhaps they weren't expecting Delta to do what Delta's done, and that maybe that's messed them up. I'm not the most 100% up to date, but I do know, at least in terms of hospital admissions per million people, I believe the USA is up there around 250. I think in the UK we're quite a bit below that. I think Sweden is below that as well, but as an example, that's going to impact plans, because even if it's just in America, DICE LA are working in this game too. So it could be that. It could be that they perhaps did their plans expecting, because you've got to remember there was the initial COVID outbreak, and just before, right now last year, we had the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. I believe, testing wasn't as mass as it is now, but there was a lot less of the Rona floating around, at least in the UK and a lot of the world. And then it was, the Kent variant that took off during the autumn and the winter, which kind of changed the game. And then Delta changed the game again. And maybe if their plans were more thinking that the sort of summer period, which is probably when there was going to be a lot of that polish and optimization, perhaps they were assuming it would have been, in terms of its characteristics, a little bit more similar to last summer after the first wave, then maybe they made some plans on that, and now that is what has changed.
Possibly, yeah.
Because, the whole big pandemic thing, we can't forget about that. And I think for a game with, I imagine, just the technical challenges, the asset size, the overall complexity, I mean, I can imagine making a game like ours or something like that remote. I don't have to. We have been. Its entire production has essentially been remote until very, very, very recently. But, and then you've got to remember too, like, it's very easy for us to sort of bring everyone into the office because, we're a small team. It's going to be different whenever you're dealing with large offices of people. So, if it is COVID, there are also pretty valid reasons.
Of course.
So, it could be that. I'm not sure what to think. All I know is I really want this game to be good because I have been playing Battlefield games since I was a kid. I sincerely want that to continue because I think they offer an experience, generally speaking, quite unlike anything else. So I want it to be good. Hopefully it will be. And I think we've really went over what is, I think, realistically the issues. Perhaps you can say that unlike with BF5, given that BF5 is seemingly, wound down a little bit quicker, you could maybe say that this game has had more pre-production, that it has had more production time and more resources. Therefore, perhaps it's not, oh dear, is there really enough in this thing to actually launch it? And it is more of a getting out the door question. Now, that said, it's definitely going to suck. Now, they're kind of lucky in one way because so many games are, they're not like autumn winter 2021. They're all, the hell February of 2022. So that is going to be good for them, but it still is going to be a crowded time period.
Yeah, it's a shame that, like, of all of the games delayed, they didn't see Call of Duty delayed, because that would have been their saving grace for that period, given the genre overlap. But I mean, I still think, based on the rumors that Hazard Zone is more Tarkov inspired, some of those rumors come from Jeff Grubb, who obviously knows something, or at least he has an EA source. That much is guaranteed.
Yeah. So
there may be decent room for to do that instead of like the Vanguard, the Warzone stuff.
Yeah.
So it might be a strong competitor against that.
I'd say, if it is more Tarkov-like, that will appeal to me more.
Yeah.
And, looking at, say, Tom Henderson's comment there, that the Warzone integration happens November 23rd, so it looks like Hazard Zone is DOA. I mean, I wonder, like, I'm a Battlefield player, I'm not a Warzone player. Yeah. That said, if I go to Jack Frags, the YouTuber on his channel, big Battlefield YouTuber historically, big into the Battle Royale games as well, does that maybe indicate that there is a lot of overlap between Battlefield and COD, between Battlefield and Warzone? Maybe that could hurt it. Certainly for me as a player, in no way will Warzone compete with Hazard Zone.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. Look, I wish the teams well, because if it's good for them, then it's going to be good for us getting good video games, and we're all here for good video games. So
absolutely.
That's what's up. That's what you need to know. That's as much analysis and trying to be reasonable about it that we can squeeze out of this one.
Yeah.
If you have another angle in this, let us know. If you have any more info, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, let us know. With that said, thanks for watching. Have a great day. See you next time.